I know Tim told me he was going to attend.
Are we not putting it up?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, this will be here for now.
Hey, Joe, how many Rotarians does it take to run a fishing derby?
Well, if you got one good one like you, that's all it takes.
Thanks a lot, Joe. But I'll tell you, I would have given the kid that caught the eel, I would have given him the prize.
Yeah. Or certainly had Scott look at it.
Oh, yeah, right.
You're gonna show me some- Okay, all right. Let's see what's up there. All right, well, do we have anything else on from commissioners? You're recording? Oh, are you recording?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I will call to order Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission special meeting for February 24th, 2022. We do have some commissioners on virtual. We'll go through the roll of commissioners who are here in person, and then we'll pivot to the ones who are virtual. Mark, do you mind starting out the roll call?
Mark Blackmore.
Sid Blodgett.
Jeff Gordon.
Jeffrey Markout. Joe Polo.
And then on virtual, we have Doug Ford,
Yes, I'm on.
Joe Adeletto,
Here,
David Morse.
Here.
Did I miss any commissioners on virtual?
Yes, Dwight Ryanowitz is here.
Dwight is here. And
Dean
Dean
is here.
Is Timothy Young there? Because I know he was going to join virtual, but no, okay. So, and Nancy Frazier is on. So we'll. Okay. Designation of alternates, it looks like we're going to need, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Need 2. So based upon where we have been in the rotation, that would be seating Dwight Reinowitz and Dean Gould.
All right.
Congratulations. And we'll note that both of them are virtual. Here. Okay. Jeff Marcotte, do you mind starting us out in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things. The folks who are on virtual, are you able to hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. I do have my laptop and camera set up. So Delia's just sharing the screen right now, but I did have it set up to kind of show a video of the commission. My usual thank yous to commissioners and staff for the work that's being done. I know this is an off week for us, but this is one of our special meetings to continue our work. Just to remind everybody, March starts next week, and we do have another special Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for next week, our first Thursday. The agenda already went out. It's basically the exact same agenda, otherwise different date. So, and we're going to be continuing to do these hybrid. For folk who are on virtual, if you don't mind keeping yourself muted, so that way we don't try to pick up this too much background noise. I know there's going to be a little bit of an echo here in this room. The acoustics of this room are not great, other than sound handling now on the walls, and they're going to be getting to at some point soon dealing with the ceiling tiles to do some type of sound. But we do have various microphones set up. That does take us to the affordable housing plan update, which is our agenda item. And Delia, you had told me that we're up to 355 surveys.
Yes, we are.
That's excellent. In fact, that might be more than the number of people who come out to vote on the town budget. So that we might have set a record. But the surveying is done as of March 1st.
Yes.
I know there's been continued reminders. I've been sending reminders out. Reminder once again just went out from the town. I had sent one out earlier. And we'll see what more we can get from people. So otherwise, Delia, if you wanted to go through, I know you had been drafting up some additional stuff about the data analysis and needs assessment. You emailed some stuff out yesterday.
Yeah, so I had made some additions and some corrections from the draft we have dated last week.
And
What I emailed yesterday was dated February
23rd.
23rd.
And now what is going to be up on the screen is some additional stuff beyond what was emailed out? Or is that what's up on the screen?
Same thing that was emailed out.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted me to go over it or just to remind everyone that I sent it out in case you want to take a look.
However you want to go, we can move forward. We are going to see about trying to get, our documents up on the website so the public can see them. So we'll see where we stand. If anybody didn't on the commission get a copy, then separately let Delia know.
I have paper copies here for those that attended tonight, and anyone who didn't come tonight that would still like it on paper, Ashley can mail it out next week.
Or are you going to tomorrow drive around and deliver them to commissioners?
No.
Oh, okay.
So would you like me to go over a few things on this document or just go into our presentation?
Well, what presentation are you doing that's different from this document? Is there something additional that you put in this document? In this document from our last meeting, it'll be good just to bring the commission and any members of the public up to speed. Is there some additional stuff and then we can move forward?
Yes. I'm just pleased to the pages that we've already covered.
And then just one question, I don't know if you answered this. Is there anything additional in presentation tonight up on the screen?
It will be after I take this up.
And so that we don't have copies of.
That's correct.
So we'll have
I
to
can
email copies out to everybody. But again, if anybody didn't get the copy from the 23rd that Delia emailed, ask Delia and she'll re-email it. So that way you have it. Okay, Delia.
Hello, Jeff.
Yes, Joe.
I just want to note, if you haven't seen it, that Tim Young has joined, if you want to make sure that that's noted.
Thank you, because we don't have that view up on the iPad right now. So Tim has joined. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Okay. So we'll note that Tim has joined, which means we only need one. So at this point then, since we only need one, I believe, right? Yes, that will then be keeping whatever order we were trying to go in. That will then be just Dwight Reinowitz. So we'll note that for the record. Welcome, Tim. Thank you, Joe.
Good evening.
It's all yours, Amelia.
As I mentioned last week, the home value distribution, I was relying on the American Community Survey data. It's, I don't believe it includes enough home values in Woodstock, so I reached out to the assessor. He has provided me with the data. I just haven't had a chance to update this chart. In the text on future housing, I'm suggesting that you consider converting existing single-family homes to duplexes.
And that was on our strategic plan. We had talked about wanting to get back to that, because right now is that prohibition on duplexes. That is long before I was on the commission. So we had talked about wanting to cycle back to that. To remind us of that.
I believe this was in the last document, but Woodstock is in the Wyndham County for the census data, and that's where you get your income values. And so this little chart is taken from the hub metro FMR area, and applies to the whole county. So here's a chart. I'm going to make it just a bit larger. So for the Woodstock community, we have 425 households that qualify as low income. 235 qualify as very low income, and 115 as extremely low income. And it shows in your chart, divides those categories between owner and renter. And this chart shows you the monthly costs for the renters that qualify as low income.
Question,
Yeah, Joe Bullock.
when you add up all these, that's what comes out to the 1.5% of affordable housing that we have in Woodstock.
No, this is income based, and that's based on the housing units. So it's a different source of data, because the people who may qualify according to their income may not be living in the housing units that are counted in most of the counties. Because those categories don't have that table up here right now, but if we looked at that table, it would have certain types of mortgages and government assistance. And so there could be households that live in town that just don't live in those kinds of houses. So they're not counted that way. They could be living, renting for family, or maybe they're managing to get by. They just don't count towards the affordable housing units.
Yes.
Just to understand this a little better. So there's almost two data sets. There's this one up on the screen that's based on people's income, what categories they fall into based on.
Yes.
The other data set is housing and what it costs, and which is, I think, what you were.
Most of the data is from the American Community Survey,
Yeah.
5-year estimates, which was the most recent data that I have available to me. Because the census from 2020 is not available yet. And this is the Department of Housing data for what they have according to what counts as affordable, and how many households would qualify if they were to apply for various types of affordable housing programs.
So is our ultimate goal, or any town's ultimate goal, is to do what you've done, kind of figure out what people's income is, how much housing costs in town, and then try to create enough housing that, say, the 775 families can afford?
I wouldn't say that the towns are gonna create that much housing, but every affordable housing plan should have this assessment done.
Yeah.
And the goal of the plan is to come up with a strategy of how to create more affordable housing. To meet that E30G, you should get to 10%, otherwise you will not be able to successfully oppose an affordable housing development should it be pushed on you.
One thing to keep in mind about that 10%, town like Woodstock, that's very difficult to get to. Just because of what infrastructure or lack thereof we have, the type of jobs, the number of jobs, public transportation. So the 10% number, based upon the affordable housing, the way the state defines it, which is a strict set of criteria, can be tough for rural towns. In general, to try to get to quote unquote affordable housing, you use the term attainable housing. That's a bit of a different metric. And a number of communities around the state are looking that way. When the legislature took this topic up last year, that created the requirement to do this update. There was a lot of pushback against the state's plan of just saying, you got to meet the state criteria. And a lot of places like, we can't, but look at it in a bigger sense of what we might be able to do to be of help to people, just not a developer come in and create affordable housing apartments. And that's coming actually up now. Actually, there's a hearing next week to discuss about affordable housing laws again this session. But a lot of the effort's been looking at what to, from a town perspective, what to do to get this attainable housing to make it easier for people as opposed to the state definition of affordable. If that makes sense.
I'm sorry to back up, but it's the state's policy that 10% of, say, Woodstock or any town's housing stock is affordable, as they define it.
So if a developer comes in with affordable housing plan, the town doesn't have a certain leeway like it otherwise does for residential development. However, if we meet that 10% mark or higher, then the rules change a bit as far as an affordable housing development. That's different than what we try to do with affordable housing with a little a, or Delia uses the term attainable housing. And that's where a lot of towns are looking.
And just check to see, those of you online, can you still hear us?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a little bit of feedback, but for the most part, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
I hope I improved it. I shut the microphone, the speaker on the laptop off so that we wouldn't have the.
Yeah, that's fine. I shut the microphone off.
It's a lot better.
Yeah, it sounds a lot clearer.
Yep. I've got a question when we get a chance.
So just to follow from what the discussion with Sid, so the issue is just trying to meet the state affordable housing. To be honest with you, a town like Woodstock, that would be difficult to do. And a lot of towns are in the same situation. It's really more the way the state is looking at it, what to do from an affordable housing point of view, but also they do recognize efforts to try to deal with attainable housing. As far as looking at this update, now who knows what they'll do in the legislative session right now. Some of the proposals are the same as last year that were shot down, and we'll see what happens this time. But right now, that's kind of how they're looking at it, is what is there realistically you can do for affordable housing with a capital A, but also with attainable housing to be of help in general.
After I show this, I could go and show that table again that's in the draft and trying to refer back to it, but there's several columns and there's different types of mortgages, government assistance, tenant rental assistance, and I can't remember other ones besides the deed restricted. I contacted the state to find out how we could increase the number of assistance vouchers and things like that, and the mortgages. How do we promote those mortgages? I was told there's nothing we can do about any of those except for the deed restricted, which would be to create deed restricted properties in town. So where I think we're gonna see the majority of our improvement is gonna be creating attainable, affordable housing. Unless you're gonna be creating, you could build more senior housing that could be deed restricted. That's your 24 units that you have now. But unless you're gonna be creating deed restricted units, I don't see that that percentage is gonna change. But we could do a lot for attainable housing.
And one of the bills in the legislature this year that was shot down last year is to include the use of accessory apartments towards the calculation of affordability. Because people may choose that right, to say, I already have an existing home, I don't want to move to some, or build something elsewhere, but I will do an accessory apartment. So there's another push this year to add that to the way the state calculates affordable housing in a sense. We'll see where that goes. Joe, Adeletta, you had a question?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Jeff. Just wanted to get back and maybe you presented it already, Delia, but with this information about specifically for Woodstock, what constitutes the extremely low income and either the housing cost or the rental cost, you've come up with some actual figures. How does that relate to what Woodstock currently has already as either homes or rental units within those dollar figures that you calculated?
That's the part of the assessment that I'm not done with yet.
Okay, good.
I will be moving on to doing a gap analysis, and I haven't finished that yet.
Okay. Thanks.
Is there anybody else on the screen that I missed that had any questions? Okay. We just want to make certain we don't forget.
Jeff?
Yes, Sid.
Hey, Doug, can I ask you a question?
Yes, Sid.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious what your opinion is on this so far as a builder. You've been working here in town for a pretty long time. I like Delia's ideas as far as, let's say, elderly housing, or what Jeff's talking about, the accessory apartments. What about single family detached residential? Is that an option to build either smaller houses on smaller lots or simpler construction that sell for a lot less? Or is there kind of a formula that with this acreage, with this market and the demographics, it's got to be whatever, 3,000 or 2,500 square foot colonial with 3 bedrooms?
We keep looking at how we can build a more affordable house. And with septic systems and wells and excavation costs, we haven't been able to come up with a method of making an affordable single-family houses within the current land use regulations or the current building environment in Woodstock or northeastern Connecticut. It's extremely difficult. There's just those fixed costs of underground power, a driveway, a septic system, a well. Those just push the costs very quickly. And that's where towns that have sewers, towns that have municipal services make a difference in terms of being able to create more affordable housing.
So sewers or public water could be like a breaking point or threshold that if they either one were available, would these more affordable single family detached homes be an option?
I don't think you'll see it with a single family detached because then your land cost will be pretty high. And and Putnam has municipal water, and we built a 6-unit condo project in Putnam, and since we built that, the water rates have quadrupled. So even the towns that have municipal services are struggling as they have to replace the infrastructure that provides those public services. But clearly, we have to deal with density. And one reason the senior housing project works well is that they have those units are on a fairly small site. And I'm pretty sure that is on the sewer system. So that helps.
If I could just pick a brain for one more thing, mixed use, apartments, multifamily. Is that what we should be considering? Would that get us to this goal of an adequate number of either affordable or attainable?
Sid, I don't think in your lifetime or my lifetime, we're going to get to that 10% affordable goal for the town of Woodstock. It's just, we don't have the growth. We don't have the other services that are required to be able to meet some of those things. But I do think multifamily is definitely one way to help. You know, we look at it over the longer terms, where we had Tom Lasky build Cornfield Point and Woodstock Meadows. When those first were developed, they were reasonably inexpensive homes. But now, you know, it's quite common those to be to $200,000 to $300,000 for a unit, even in those projects, which have a fairly high density. But the opportunity, the desirability of Woodstock the market has driven the cost of housing up because people really would love to live in the rural countryside of Woodstock.
And I guess with Cornfield Point or Woodstock Meadows being so expensive, it's not a whole lot more to get that single family home on a couple acres in a more rural setting. Is that right?
Well, as I mentioned, we continue having trouble being able to meet that goal. But part of that is that we've come up with a certain way of building a house that's very energy efficient, has long-term low maintenance and things, which drive our construction costs. There are less expensive ways to build houses. We just haven't gone that route.
Well, we have talked a number of times before in the commission about looking at multifamily, mixed uses, duplexes. Those are all things that we've kept on our strategic plan and certainly valid to be bringing up for, you know, this plan. But even after we update this plan, there's going to have to be continued updates and reviews to see, you know, right now, I think our multifamily regulations are quite funky. But we haven't updated them. So this will be a good opportunity to revisit that type of stuff as far as where do we stand, not from the affordability point of view, but also from a permitting process point of view. Where are we with that? Because that can add costs as well, you know, to developers who can pass that on then as far as the overall cost. So actually some very interesting ideas in some communities. Most of them have been suburbs, but some very interesting ideas that have been floated around to try to see how to guide some state legislation has been, how do you do multifamily, even mixed use, especially in the suburbs where they can have, you know, multi-story and you can have businesses on the first floor, and then you have, you know, and they also get into, you know, how do you deal with parking and, you know, that type of stuff. But this was some very interesting concepts being thrown around as to what could be viewed as affordable that the state could actually, you know, give you credit for.
Mobile home parks, going to get you into your affordable housing.
If they did restricted, if they weren't, then we don't know.
Right. Again, the state definition of affordability is strict.
Yeah.
And that's been the problem. You know, it's called 830G. That's the law that people refer to affordability. It has not been updated in any meaningful way in a very long time. But the state still relies upon it and tries to add to it. And that was the problem last year, that the legislature didn't make certain changes to it to make it more workable. They just added things onto it. And so this time around, there's a big push, and there's actually legislation already submitted to kind of, in a sense, modernize that 830G affordable housing and say it hasn't really been working the way it was designed. It's difficult for a lot of communities to meet that mark, but yet the state says, well, if you don't meet the mark, you can get punished for it. Let's modernize it and update it and rework it and broaden it. So we'll see if that gains traction this year. And if it does, then that 10% rule, a lot of places can actually, it will be easier. So for me personally, I'm hopeful that that might gain traction in the legislature this year, because that would, to me, be more meaningful to really broaden what might be considered affordable or attainable. And then communities like Woodstock, you know, wouldn't get listed as saying, oh, you're not meeting the 10%, you're not doing something right. We actually can be doing something right, but if we don't get credit for it by the state doesn't care. So we'll see how that goes this year. Was there anybody else on? No, okay. Do you want to go ahead, Delia?
Sure. And I apologize, it has the wrong date on there. I just realized that.
What?
It says February 3rd.
Oh, okay. I didn't notice that. We won't hold that against you. Yes, Joe Poole.
Could you research where the water line and sewer line are in town?
There's a map showing that.
Could you include that in that handout?
Sure.
We actually, in our POCD, we have a number of those maps. I don't know if any of them need to be updated, but it'll be good to have several things. Well, the POCD was updated in when, 2015?
Yeah.
And we had a number of maps, at least a dozen in there, including about where the sewer district is. But we can actually, that's a good idea to have some of those maps, especially if there's anything updated. I don't think they changed the sewer district at all. But the,
No, it's a huge deal, remember.
yeah, it is, because there's a, you know, sewer avoidance type of rule in town, but the, but those maps can be put in. We purposely put them into the POCD because they're helpful references. And it's only a small section that has the sewer capability.
Did you get a copy of the POCD when you joined the commission?
Yes, I got it.
The maps for
I have
that.
one.
But yeah, I can email out the maps.
But some of those maps would be very helpful to be
Well,
putting in.
yes, especially if we're only gonna have affordable housing pretty much where existing sewer lines and water lines exist.
Well, I don't think you could put anything more on where the sewer line is right now, because it's right by us here. But I think some of those maps would be helpful to put in as references, so people have some idea, you know, about some of this type of stuff, especially since when you're talking about, you know, residential, really anything outside the sewer district, you're relying upon natural resources. You have to have your soils be able to be
Is there
proper
a
to
water-
drain.
Is there a water district then also, as well as a sewer district? But there is a water line.
We don't have public water.
Nowhere?
There's no
There's a
public
couple
water.
of community wells, but they only
Right.
serve limited populations around the
There's no
well.
public water line.
No, town does not do that. I don't think anything comes out of Putnam to parts of Woodstock, does it?
I think the community wells are located in Woodstock and they serve neighborhoods. like
As far as like an infrastructure the town has for public water,
Right.
that's wells. For the natural resources, you know, those maps we put in the POCD are important, because one of the things we want to make certain is that anything that's being done with regards to building and things like that, the use of the natural resources and the protection of the natural resources. So,
Yeah, I guess I was under the impression that when Line Master caused pollution, that some water lines were put in.
but I don't think any of that is public infrastructure. Because they're a Superfund site up there.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, by
test
the
it all
EPA.
the time.
They do, yeah. I remember we got a map one time when they had to do the mansion up there.
Mhm.
And then we got this massive, you know.
Well, that's why I thought if for a Superfund site with a plume migrating, that a water line would have been put in to prevent that plume from infiltrating into adjacent wells.
I'm not aware that there's any public infrastructure like that coming out from there.
We'd have to probably have the water authority next to it. And somebody's
Yeah, we don't have a public water
taxing
authority.
people for those.
Okay, thank you.
But Delia's point is well taken, that there have been some developments where they share those resources.
Roseland Lake shares a well, and there's a well, community well over, I don't remember exactly where, but it probably is over by the apartment complexes and the condos in South. Woodstock.
Yeah, you'd have to have a really good aquifer to provide water to several units.
But the multi-family ones that are already built in, they have, each individual unit doesn't have its own well,
No,
so they're sharing
They must
whatever. Yeah.
have a good aquifer.
And that's all then based upon what they find and what NVDH signs off on. Yeah, so
None of those developments were moved, so.
they've been there for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't here when they were built, so I didn't review that, but I have done certificate of zoning compliance on several large properties, including what was Hyde School, the South Woodstock campus of Woodstock Academy. And I reviewed a couple of properties that had apartment complexes and condos. And so I would have looked at stuff like that. And then the state at one time contacted me about community development. So we have probably, not much more than 2 of them. So here's the same table I showed at the last meeting with your residential uses summarized. So then we think about what's missing. What are the opportunities for compatible housing? So the types of housing and the types of permits that are required, you have single family homes and you're allowed to have accessory buildings with those, needing a zoning permit. You can have an accessory apartment allowed with the single family home with the zoning permit. That works well. And the apartments are put in by property owners that want them. And then you have multifamily, which is currently 2+ units, and it requires a special permit. In the entire time that I've worked in Woodstock, almost 16 years, and also in all the time that I've been reviewing regulations going back to when I first found that in the regulation, which I think was early 2000s, I just don't have the exact date right now. It's only resulted in one application, which was, I think, just as we started the COVID pandemic. And that was not for rental housing. It was for a family. It was a duplex with an accessory apartment on the same property. And then they were unrelated to the multifamily status. There were like guest houses for relatives. So they want to be rented out as apartments.
Like Crystal Park.
Yes. So the reason why that application required why it was considered multifamily is because it has a duplex plus the accessory apartment. I'm not sure if you've been following the issue of housing as it's been discussed in the state in the last couple of years, but this image is from a book called Missing Middle Housing, and this is the full spectrum of housing basically around the country. Certainly not what you're going to find in any individual town anywhere near here. For the sake of the image, these units were crammed together to show you all of them on one page, but they certainly are not going to be built that close together. So what would be compatible in Woodstock? We know the single family detached homes on the left in the green circle, we know that they fit. And I'm suggesting that we consider duplexes and perhaps fourplexes in the right places. And now with this discussion, we're not talking about what kinds of permits. That would be another discussion for later on. We already have some condo developments and they're very much like townhouses. I don't know that they show condos in this diagram, but they're very much like townhouses. And so then we think about what accessory apartments look like. And you can have them as a detached freestanding structure attached, shares at least one wall of the primary home. Interior built from existing converted space in the attic and the basement. A garage apartment converted former garage space and above the garage. And here's just a couple examples of small little apartment sized dwellings that I think could work well in Woodstock. Here's a bunch of pictures of what duplexes might look like. I purposely did not choose pictures of houses that you recognize. I didn't want anyone to feel like I used their picture of their house and found these pictures on the internet. A few things to keep in mind. Zoning does not dictate the architecture. The photos were provided for the conversation's sake. In terms of who might live in the new, more attainable homes, think of your adult children in their first home when you became an adult. Your parents as they become empty nesters, other relatives, single parents, someone who wants to downsize, your friends or neighbors who fit into one of these categories, an employee working in a local business, and you if you fit into one of these categories. And we have probably more than I can list here. So I'm suggesting that there's the potential housing opportunities compatible in rural communities such as Woodstock, include duplexes. And you could even convert existing single-family homes to duplex with very little impact on your neighborhood. Condominiums or townhouses, additional senior housing, independent and assisted senior living, mixed-use zoning to allow residential and business on the same lot, above the business or elsewhere on the lot, and multifamily rental housing. This is not to say all of these would be appropriate in all areas of town. That's a next level discussion.
Talking about duplexes, I remember this was explained to me one time. Does anyone remember why the prohibition on duplexes went in? We do have an aerial duplex. Why was it actually put in? Was there an actual zoning reason, or was it somebody?
I can't confirm it, but I heard a story about it that had to do with a subdivision that was composed of single family houses and then one duplex built in it. And then they called that the protection method. I have another one of those handy dandy interactive surveys. You can use your phone with your QR reader. Or if you're taking the full almost items to your phone. And I know that seems really funny because it's not near you or items, but you have has an account and full reader. Enormous site with minimal difference in what you get, you can change your website name or your portal name. But the cost to do that is enormous.
Before we do that, I just want to make sure, is there anybody on virtual that, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody who's joined us by Zoom who has any questions so far about what Delia, or comments, what Delia has gone through. Just want to make sure that we haven't missed anybody. Okay.
And I think it's the way the town has the Zoom set up. There doesn't seem to be any chat. Otherwise, I'd be able to put the live link in the chat, but the chat's not available. So you'll have to type it in the way you see it on the screen, or you can use your QR reader. If anyone doesn't have their phone, they can share mine.
Yeah, I don't have.
You don't have your special counsel? They gave you as a commission?
I have to take it away from them.
Should be. Zoom.
While you're doing that, Delia, one of the things that you're presenting here will be basically reminding us that we really do need to delve into the details of where we are with multifamily housing, mixed use opportunities, duplex.
What's the address again, Jim?
EV.com. Maureen Adams 304.
We lose the screen. We're trying to get the screen to be shared again, so You unshare and then share.
So.
Just bear with us, we're trying to see why we lost the share the screen capability.
Jeff, from remotely, we're still seeing Delia's screen.
But I set it up so that people can answer more than once, so maybe if you could share with someone else. It might be smaller.
Yeah, and we have also the folks on Zoom, so we want to make certain we know that they don't things. So we'll have to see what's up with VAB.
People online, are you able to access the website?
No, I haven't yet, because I'm just waiting to see if we're able to get things.
Somebody did. So
I haven't responded, so.
don't be shy.
It works.
Oh, there it goes. Let's see if we can get it back up and running.
What we need.
So it's polling.com/Gordon Adams. 304.
All right. How about the people on Zoom? I want to make certain, are you guys able to access what Delia has sent out, or is that something you're not able to? I'm trying to get things to get back up on the screen.
So far, Jeff, I
Have
have
you been
not
able
been
to
able
access
to.
it?
I got it to work. This is David.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. And I can see Delia's screen, and I got the poll thing to work on my,
Can you hear us?
I responded. But I can't hear you.
Anybody hear us?
Oh, I can hear you.
I can hear.
That's good.
Obviously, you can't hear us.
No idea.
We're having, for some reason, we're having a technological breakdown.
Can you guys hear us now?
We can hear you. We could hear you all the time.
Doug or Joe or any of you, can you hear us when we're talking?
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear.
We're trying to figure out why the audio, why the visual has stopped working here. I don't know the setup at the town hall, so. Okay.
No.
You want to just move forward then, Delia, for sake
Sure.
of time, we can just discuss some of these things more in general. You know, we just can't do the survey, we can't do it, we can move some things, you know, farther along. So we can see what we're able to do.
Don't be shy. One more chance. Anyone have any more comments to make?
Yes, I'm sorry, what?
Did you get in?
I just got on now.
Mark?
Yeah. I'm so focused on this, I didn't hear what you were saying.
I don't know why my phone isn't working. I'm not gonna do it, but
Okay. Well, we may not be able to share the screen if we can't get the town hall system to work that weekend. Who knows what it's doing and why it decided to shut itself off. Sorry about that. We'll try to see what we can do to move some things forward. Why don't we just move forward, Delia, while we're trying to see why the visuals.
okay, if anyone else has any last comments to add? I think there's one more slide.
Okay.
So, and you can do this more than once, but what are the individual words that you think of when it comes to housing in Woodstock? And this will make that picture called the word cloud, where you have a lot of different pictures that show up.
Nobody's really able to see the word thing. So. Okay.
Well, I'm sharing this screen online, so anybody who's online should be able to see it.
Oh, they can?
Yeah, just not people.
We just can't. Oh, okay. All right. Do you want to let us know some of the words, Delia, so that way those who can't see it, we can. There's never been an easy way to operate that.
These have always been a pain. So there's like a picture of a little house in the middle of the screen, and it says rural, and the words keep moving around, but it's stately, adequate, spread, exciting, cantankerous, peace, expensive, needed, homes, rural, stately, Delia. Big, adequate, rural, needed, and a smiley face. Bountiful. Suburban. Single. I think I can show these to you when we're all done. Does anyone have any more words to add?
Okay.
On the buttons.
For some reason it decided to not
Yeah,
want
it
to
just has
share.
no signal, so,
Who knows what it's doing?
yeah, we might need a new cord or something. I'll talk to them on Monday.
Okay.
So that part of the meeting is closed. And we'll go back to the presentation.
We're just not going to be able to see it. Those of us who are here.
There's only 2 slides left.
Okay.
So the next thing is your friendly neighborhood advertising commercial for the survey. If you haven't done the survey yet, there's paper surveys over here. And make sure you tell your friends and family and neighbors.
I think once we get the survey closed, that's coming up next week, it's going to be very interesting for us to see what to have. So the questions, comments, we're going to get. I mean, if 355 so far at least time to do the survey, it will be very interesting to see what people are saying. You know, what they think is working, not working, what their opportunities are. So I think that will actually be
You know, how long do you feel will take you once the survey closes to, on the Survey Monkey, it has it all for you, right? For each question, all the answers.
That part's pretty easy if they're multiple choice or the ones where you check off the answer. The question that takes a long time is anything that has written in answers. That will take a while.
But we'll at least be able to soon after the survey closes, start getting seeing some of the data from it.
I was hoping by the March regular meeting,
Okay.
probably not in time to send it out with your agenda packet, but once the survey closes, I'm gonna go to the libraries because I had dropped off paper surveys with the libraries. And also I mailed enough for all of the residents of the senior housing. And so I need to collect those and then put them in.
We'll
So that
likely
could
be
take a
able
little
to,
time.
we're gonna bring it up at our business meeting, two commissioners before the meeting with enough time to review, so we can work on it. We can see where we are, with that. Okay. Did you have anything else on your slides, Delia, or?
Just my contact information.
Well, let me just raise this up just because, for some, I've already mentioned about multifamily. What do folks think further about the multifamily mixed uses? I mean, I lump duplexing under multifamily. What do we think in general about, separate from us knowing you have to look at those regulations to update them anyway? What do folks think about whether or not that might, in general, those types of housings are something workable in town as far as meaningful for affordability or attainability, as far as delving down that as options? Joe?
Yeah, given what we've been hearing about,
1 second, Joe, we can't hear you. I don't know why.
any better now?
We're trying to figure out why we're having audio visual problems. There we go. Can you?
Does that sound better?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Given what we were hearing this evening about just the cost of doing building in northeastern Connecticut and Woodstock in particular, duplex housing in principle to me doesn't sound bad, but I don't know if that would meet the needs of affordable housing in terms of the cost of building a duplex to make it economically viable for the builder. If there are duplexes and they charge a high rent or it's a high cost to buy your portion, the duplex isn't addressing the problem. So I think it's got to be a combination of understanding the cost of putting in some of these suggestions versus how it really addresses affordable housing.
And unfortunately, there are certain factors out of our control.
Yep.
Cost of labor, cost of materials, those types of stuff are out of our control.
No, I understand. It's just, that's a factor to recognize that suggesting duplexes or multifamily housing, while an approach, may not be an answer for our area.
Okay. What do others think?
The
Mark?
duplexes, to me, I'm picturing duplexes, I picture Putnam, we've got the city water and sewer. Whereas here, to put in duplexes, again, how is it one well? How does that, how is it being shared? If it's strictly if it's only two families, water and sewer, is that gonna be separate for each side of these duplexes? Is it?
Well, that would be regulated by the health department, but I'm
But so
sure
I
that
don't,
you do
I
want
don't see it really working.
we can get more information from the health department and what their regulations are.
What are they doing? What happened with some of the duplexes that are in town now?
The ones on 197 going towards Union, they're one driveway, 2 units that each have their own well.
They do? What about Doug Hill? Aren't there duplexes up there? Are those duplexes? As you're heading up towards Converse Street?
Those are condos.
Are those condos, not duplexes?
Those are condos.
Those are condos. I forget the name of that complex. I forget the name of it.
I think that's called Fawn Hill.
Fawn Hill,
Is it
yeah,
Fawn
Fawn Ridge,
Hill?
Fawn Ridge, I think.
Oh, okay, yes. Yep. But Oh, so go.
Duplexes on 97, growing wells, people have their own septic systems.
But Delia, you said you'll find out from public health as far as what their regs are. Because whatever they're saying is needed, that's we have to be aware of. They'd have to sign off anyway.
Like they mentioned to explore duplexes, multi-use or mixed use. And then get from the public as to whether those are options that like residents or developers have, whether they can contribute to attainable or affordable housing. That's more like I think of it more as a simple math calculation by the developer or somebody to see what they cost to build and at what size, whether it will work or not.
Okay.
I don't think there's necessarily need to limit to a duplex either. 3, maybe 4-unit buildings or in the right circumstance. There's the points that Doug Porter brought up obviously are a factor, but that could somehow be overcome. Not opposed to that.
And also would depend upon where we'll go. You know, how much land there is, where, you know, that type of stuff. But some of the multifamily ones that are around are, other than Cornfield Point, but the other one, the Meadows, that's set back a little bit. They'll drive by, but you don't see those places unless you go up there. So you don't see all of Cornfield Point anyway when you drive by, you know, anyway. So, and they seem to have, you know, there are certainly places in town where there's enough land if one wanted to consider some of that. I guess it's really going to come down to economics of building it, you know, and selling the units and what would be considered affordable or attainable and that type of stuff. And some of that is just purely market driven. So, Joe?
Well, I just wanted to add that one, I think the gap analysis that Delia will be working on will be very informative to see where Woodstock stands in terms of the number of available units already in town that are considered affordable, either by ownership or rental. But then just on, I think your last comment, Jeff, the state, I believe, has grants for someone who wants to build a number of units that would help subsidize the building costs as long as there were X number of affordable housing units in a developed area. So
Usually those are limited to where what towns are eligible for that kind of funding.
Oh, okay. Okay. Fair
But it
enough.
still can't hurt to look into what are some of those, what might be available for something that might be done in a town like Woodstock. You know, we can certainly check on that and have a better understanding.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Yes, Sid.
So I understand some cities and towns and state can get subsidies from the state or the feds to construct these. Woodstock sounds cool.
In the past, it was, I haven't checked to see what the current funding restrictions are, but lots of different types of funding in the past prioritized certain communities, distressed communities, like Putnam, Measure, Thompson was part of Thompson might qualify, and Plainfield, and there's some other towns in the area, but the towns that are on 395, and also if they're considered a distressed community, you get a lot more funding for certain types of development than other towns. And so I have to look at what the new funding is.
Yeah, one can just find that out, what the state actually has or doesn't have as far as some of those programs. So, especially for communities up here, separate from the cities per se. Anything from anybody else? And I just want to check to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Anything further from anybody on Zoom? I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay.
Yeah, from a cost standpoint, like Jeff said, a 4 unit, you're gonna build, it's gonna be a lot cheaper than a 2. Fourplex, it'll be more affordable than 2plex.
And those are things we'll have to look at. So, well, let me just raise this additional, since if one's looking at different types of housing, we also have to look at what type of permitting process do we have. Right now for the multifamily, that's special permit. Automatically. Is that something we see wanting to keep, say, all of that has to be special permit, or trying to find certain of the situations might require a special permit if the developer comes in and says, I want to build 100 units, versus someone says, I want to do something smaller, and do we need to make that go through a special permit? Is there a different process? It also gets into mixed uses, where right now mixed uses are special permit.
Yeah.
And how we want to kind of, handle that. We want to keep everything special permit. That's a certain type of process involved, and certainly monetarily. Or do we think there might be some different options? Keep the special permit for the big things, but things smaller scope. We'll try to encourage some of the mixed use, type stuff, especially if there's any of the old homes that someone wants to keep residential, and also, lease out or run a business out of if it's not a home occupation. Do we think there might be something? It also gets into how we view home occupations, as well, versus those that are really not home occupations. But I open that up as well, because that stuff we'll have to look at as far as how we permit some of that stuff, as well. So for me, I think there could be some opportunities for us to revisit the permitting for multifamily mixed use. If we're going to try to, I think that might be something that might be in the mix for affordable, attainable housing. There might be some ways of seeing what to do with the permitting process, but still keep the commission's flexibility that when we have to have a special permit for something that's big in scope, we recognize we need special permit for something that big. But I open that up as well, folks think that might be something as well to look at.
I agree. I think there is the opportunity for some massaging, or at least to take a look at some of that stuff, so.
Okay. I think we've talked about that, Delia. I know we brought that up with Ashley, Delia. We brought that up amongst ourselves in the commission when we were talking about ag. And how do we want to look at, some of the business aspects of ag, and some of the, the business, the non-ag business stuff. And we talked about, what we might do with some permitting and things like that. That the corollary to that is, what do we do with regards to residential? As far as some of this. So, but I think that's something we can be bringing up as well. Be thinking about what we might want to do. Okay. Sid?
So I'm kind of open to discussing the permitting process as well. Also, though, I think if we go down a new path, whether it's mixed use or multifamily, it's just kind of nice to have that feedback or input and involvement in the process. But say that's kind of an event with stuff permanent. Although we don't want to be so very burdensome that applicants aren't even bothering, because there's time and money and all the requirements and other professionals that need to develop draft reports, landscape plans, et cetera, et cetera. But it's going to be a little bit of a balancing act, I think.
Well, there might be some permitting processes that might not be as full as a special permit, but still the commission weighs in on, has to approve. We also have those provisions throughout our regulations that say, if at any time the commission feels that it needs something additional, not that we would want to go crazy with that, but if we feel that something, something is unique with that parcel or whatever is proposed, we feel, we really need to get some additional professional input or some additional reports, our regulations give us the flexibility for that.
Likewise, it's nice to be able to waive a lot of requirements that might be on the books, but don't really apply this without, not require several things.
And we've done that somewhat when we reworked some of the especially some of the zoning permit process. We reworked that a bit, and when we did the subdivision, we reworked that to say, here are some of the basic things you need to give us. You shall give us these things unless you ask for a waiver, but then here are other things you might need if the commission or the CEO feels it's needed. And we've done some of that as well to try to say, instead of, you gotta give us everything, and now they're giving us 100 waiver requests. We streamlined the process that way, but still kept those options as options if we feel we had to start getting those. And those are some of the things, the way we can look at it as well. We did that, again, with special permit and with subdivision. And that can be a way of not tagging applicants or developers to have to give us a long laundry of things, some of which may not even be pertinent. But if for some reason we feel something is, we state it and we say, look, we need it, we still have the authority to ask it. And we can look at it that way and see what's up. Is there anything from anybody else? We do have a meeting next week. So let me ask two questions. I don't want to put you on the spot, Delia. For our meeting next week, which is already scheduled, what further do you feel there would be that you could have ready for us? I know it's like a week away.
I won't be able to get it in advance of the meeting. I have a meeting on Monday I have to prepare for, but I would like to get some information on all of the apartment complexes in the condo developments that we have. And maybe get a copy of their site plans and information on their well and septic, and call the health department to see if I can get information on what's required for new multifamily.
And do we think that you'd be able to get that for our next meeting, or, because I don't want to put you on the spot, but that gets my other question is, if we're trying to get some further info from you, for example, what else is the commission looking at? We will have this on the agenda for the meeting on the 17th, which is our business meeting. It's going to be on anyway. I don't think we're going to have 10,000 applications. I don't think so, Ashley, that we have a long line of applications we're anticipating for the 17th. So we're going to have opportunity for the 17th. Do we want to still keep the meeting next week on the books, or do we feel that might be too rushed? If there's further stuff we're waiting for Delia to get to us, we're going to need to be getting some stuff in from the survey. Also, for us to be able to have a chance to see some of it ahead of time. So I'll open it up as far as what people think about keeping the meeting next week, or how do we want to handle it? And I want to make certain we are able to, as commissioners, too. It's one thing to be able to see stuff at the meeting itself, but sometimes it is helpful. I know it is helpful to see things ahead of time to be able to digest it. Be prepared to ask questions and comments. Joe, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to raise a question about what's been publicly advertised as the opportunity for the public to weigh in on this. Did we indicate that March 3rd was also a public hearing type opportunity?
No, we haven't yet. We haven't yet thrown out the March schedule. Which is going to go out to the public soon. We just told them about the February, and there's been a lot of reminders that have gone out, and also about the survey. So we haven't yet thrown out the March schedule, other than what's already on the books is, remember, we always have the first Thursday listed anyway. But as far as for affordable housing, we haven't yet thrown that out to the public for, hey, these are the dates in March.
Okay, thanks.
So what do folks think about, do we think we'll have enough time to pivot for next week, or do we want to regroup for the 17th? Delia will have a chance to get more together. We'll have some more from the surveys available, get stuff out to us to look at, and then move forward on the 17th.
This is David. I'm not going to be in town next week anyway, so I'm.
Okay, well, we know some constables who can make certain you stay in town. You might know more.
Yeah.
Joe?
Jeff, if there's very little new information that would be available for next week, and it might be beneficial for Delia to have a little more time to focus on pulling together more information for the 17th. I would be in favor of just using March 3rd as a regular special meeting as opposed to just focusing on affordable housing, or not having the meeting at all, either one of those.
I think the option really would be not having the meeting, because we'd also then have to pivot and see what further to bring up for next week. So I think, trying to think of it logistically, it would sound more that we just wouldn't hold the meeting and pick up on the 17th.
Okay, cancel the meeting, that is my vote.
Do you want to make that as a motion?
I'll wait to other commissioners if they want to weigh in with their thoughts. I'm happy to make a motion, but I want to give people an opportunity to give their opinion as well.
What do folks think about not
I
doing the
agree-
meeting next week,
I agree
picking up
with
on the
Joe.
17th?
I'll second that, Joe.
How about the commissioners online? How do you feel about that?
That's fine by me.
Fine by me.
I
Okay.
agree with Joe.
All right,
I
then I'll
agree.
make it a motion. Move to cancel the meeting on March 3rd.
And Mark, you had seconded it. Okay, just because we have some of you guys on virtual, I'm told I'm required to go through the roll so it's clear on our recording. So cancel the March 3rd meeting. Hearing no further discussion. Joe Adaletta,
Aye.
Mark Blackmer,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett, Jeff Gordon, aye. Who did I see? I gotta remember who I seated for, was it Dean? Dwight did, okay. Jeff Marcotte. David Morse,
Aye.
Joe Palula.
Aye.
And Dwight Reinowitz
Aye.
and Timothy Young.
Aye.
I think that passes. Okay. All right. Do we have anything else further for tonight on what Delia has brought up? Otherwise, it looks like we have a list of different things to look further into. We'll look forward to starting to get some info from the survey. And then we do have, just to remind people, on the 17th, we do have that application to turn one of the lots into a building lot. Hopefully we'll get the information they're required to submit to us. We do also have that public hearing on the driveway on that lot, which is, we'll open the public hearing, but otherwise we don't have anything else yet for that meeting. So it sounds like we'll be able to focus the vast majority of the meeting on the affordable housing and have a good amount of stuff to pick up then. Okay,
Yeah,
yes, Mark.
now that we voted to cancel that, wasn't that third originally for legal training?
No, we canceled that.
Okay, I meant what did that
No.
come back up?
So what we did was we voted to not do the legal training. Then we looked to see about in June, tentatively. And Rich Roberts told us that he could do June if we wanted to pivot to that or some later time. But we decided we would defer on the legal training until after we get through affordable housing. So that's where we stand on it. So that we can cancel for the 3rd. So he's off his books.
I wasn't sure if that was slide back in.
Well, we wouldn't be able to because we want to be able to get him some questions and other things like that we have, and we wouldn't have time to give it to him and then him to be able to prepare it and get it out to us. So, okay. I think, and then is that all you wanted to present tonight, Delia?
Yeah.
Is there anything from anybody else before I ask for adjournment? Okay. Commissioner Young, did you want to make a motion to adjourn then?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
So motion by Young, seconded by Blackmer to adjourn the meeting. I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta,
Aye.
Mark Blackmer,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett, Jeff Gordon, I'll vote aye on that. Jeff Marcotte,
Aye.
David Morris,
Aye.
Joe Palula, Dwight Reinowitz,
Aye.
and Timothy Young.
Aye.
So that so passes. Whatever time you have. Okay. I apologize that we had some AV issues with the system here at Town Hall. We're gonna look into why certain of the systems